Hello, I'm Matt Stevens and welcome to the KISS Super League, the first ever esports league to feature professional cyclists, all held exclusively on Zwift. Now this is week 3 or round 3 of 10 weeks of exciting racing where some of the best pro riders will go head to head each week, also against some of the finest riders within Zwift or from the Zwift community. Now, the Zwift KISS Super League is made up of 15 teams comprising of 4 pro continental teams, 9 continental teams, and as I said before, 2 teams from Zwift. Now, strategy in these races is absolutely crucial, and as we progress through the Super League, it's going to be very interesting to see how the professional riders really square up against each other, but more importantly against the far more experienced KISS racers, because many of these pros have never raced on Zwift before. Now, strategy, as I mentioned before, is absolutely key because there's something called power-ups, which the community riders have used a lot before, that they can really help in terms of sprints, in terms of getting a very, very fast start, because the starts in these races are absolutely crucial. Now, today's route takes us over a very, very fast course. It's the flat Watopia route, which we'll have a look at in a few moments. Tactics, again, are going to be crucial, especially that start. Not too much elevation on this course in stark comparison to the races of the last couple of weeks, where we started on the volcano and then we moved over to Innsbruck. Now the distance is 30.6 k's, that's just under 19 miles. Total elevation of 183 meters. Each lap, just over 10 k's, 6.3 miles, and the race is 3 laps long. So very, very short. It's the shortest race so far. Again, just looking at the back end of the course here. Now going in towards the last part of the lap, you can just see the S-bends before the little climb and then the drop down into finish. And this is where timing, I think, is going to be absolutely crucial. This is where the pros, I think, are really going to have to start to learn the ropes of how they get to grips with beating the Zwift All-Stars, for example. Now, over the last couple of weeks, we've seen some fast and furious racing. The opening round was won by Madison Genesis's remarkably talented all-rounder Ian Bibby. That meant that Madison Genesis led the opening rankings. Last week, it was actually the Ribble Pro Cycling's Ed Hopper who took a quite remarkable solo victory. Let's have a little look at the highlights of what took place last week.
Christensen absolutely killing it on the front here. Ed Hopper shows us how it's done and just barely holds on to first place overall in today's KISS Super League. Round number 2, Ed Hopper for the W.
Rankings being the Zwift All-Stars are top in the rankings, just ahead of Madison Genesis with Ribble Pro Cycling in 3rd place. The riders are warming up, nearly ready to roll on the grid. Let's head over to Nathan Guerra to take us through what should be a fascinating and thrilling race. Nathan.
For that intro, Matt, appreciate it. I'm Nathan Guerra. We are out on KISS Super League, race number 3, pro racing out on the Zwift for the first time out here. And it looks like we're here when Watopia flat route, 3 laps. It's going to be a fast and furious race. Very flat. There's just got the S's to deal with really out there. There's going to be some sprints, though, intermediate sprints. Points up for grabs each lap, but it's going to be a shorter race. I'm expecting crazy fast speeds. We do have 60 riders hanging out in the pens right now. 18 seconds to go to the start as we look at the course preview here. But you know, it's going to be the question of the orange numbers from the get go. Usual, we're going to have fast and furious start, and we'll see if the riders have a similar issue as they did last week. 30 off the back, right from will half the pack get taken out immediately. I have a feeling some of the teams have been doing their homework out there, and they probably are going to be able to hang on from the start here. But we're right into the racing. As you can see, the orange numbers are popping. The quads are locking. We are going out of the pens now, out on course here. Looks like we're looking at A. Hartley here, 8.0 watts per kilometer, 177 beats per minute already. I was chilling in the pens a little bit prior to the start, and a lot of the pros are actually asking for a neutral start. I think the All-Stars, along with the Dream Team, who are very used used to the fast starts, as well as we've seen Ribble, as well as Genesis. We've seen Dimension Data involved in a lot of the breaks. They aren't slowing down at all. As you can see up toward the front end of the race here, there is definitely some pressure already being put on the pack at this point in order to try and perhaps break things up immediately, as we saw last week. Toward the front end of the group right now, we are seeing is going to be Mazzato along with Lachlan. Actually, it looks like Lachlan here, actually out of Ireland here, leading things out at about 174 beats per minute, currently 430 watts. The RPMs are really kicking over right now, as you can see, but it is now taking over the front end of the pack as we do head on over into Ocean Boulevard. It is going to be Rivard now, out of the US of A. And then following up by him is going to be Motram, and then Battistella as well from Team Dimension Data from Quebec here. Anderson's there as well. And it looks like the pack this week definitely not breaking up as much as we saw the weeks past. So this was one of the predictions that we did see from some of those that were in the community chatting a lot. There was a lot of chatter, actually. We talked about it a little bit on the Zwiftcast as well recently, the podcast put together by Simon Schofield. There was some chatter about what happened last week, what happened the week before that between the pro teams. Did they have the experience to try and hang on out on Zwift from the get-go, and that they were not able to do so just because of the crazy fast starts that they were not used to. It does look like a little bit of experience is coming into the legs for some of these riders, as well as their minds here and able to hang on. But again, we do have a break immediately again here, as we're seeing Oid here, as well as Dahlheim, Mini, Noble here off the back immediately. So right from the get-go, we do have a little bit of a break that has happened here, but 50 riders now have made the front group as they are heading into the underground tunnel here. And as you can see, this section of the course, very flat. We are going to have coming up here in just a moment, though, a little bit of 3% gradient, uphill gradient. It takes about 30 seconds or so to climb as they do exit the underground tunnel halfway through Ocean Boulevard. And at that point, a lot of times we do see a break take place in these races early on for anybody who might be over threshold or right around threshold. If the pressure is put on, if these riders are not hanging on and using the draft as best as they possibly could, well, there may be a break at that point. After that, the next main point of contention is most likely going to be the S-turns leaving Ocean Boulevard. From there, they will go through the old Italian village, and we'll see the first contest for the sprint points, and it's four places for the sprint points. It's going to be 5, 3, 2, and 1 for the sprint points. And I have a feeling that might break things apart because there may be a counterattack out of the sprints, because immediately after the sprint, they enter the Essies, which is a series of rolling undulations right before they start the next lap. With only 3 laps, 3 sprints like that, and the Essies involved each lap, it's going to be nothing but attack after attack after attack to try and counter each one of those sections, I have a feeling. Let's go ahead and take a look at the front end of the race, though. Are there any attacks at this point? Is it just going to be Gruppo Compacto? It looks like the riders are really kind of keeping it calm at this point. We do see a little bit of a gap off the front, though, with Anderson here, as well as Perez now making a little bit of a kick here. 6.4 watts per kilogram. That's not really a little bit of a kick, actually. That's a fairly solid effort here coming from Perez, actually, up into 6 watts per kilogram. It's not into the orange numbers that you'd usually want to see to try and make those breaks. A lot of times, you know, the amount of effort that you do need to make a break off the front end of the pack in Zwift is an 8 to 9 to 10 watts per kilogram or so, especially at this level of racing. You're going to need almost a semi-sprint to cause the kind of gap that you're going to need in order to try and get away. It does look like the riders are starting to attack, though, the little 3% gradient that we were talking about. And at the front end of the group now, it looks like it looks like Put, as well as Moses now, actually, from Madison Genesis here, looks to be very organized toward the front end here. It looks like Tom Moses here, 5.0 watts per kilogram, 176 beats per minute. Currently, does look like the heart rates did get raised up a little bit. Moving on back to 14th place, looks like a little bit of fade climbing going on for Moses now. Casey Shum from Zwift All-Stars up toward the front end of it as well. For those of you unfamiliar with what's going on in front of you right now, just tuning in, this is the first ever pro racing league on Zwift, the KISS Super League. We're in the round 3. Also, 2 community teams that have come up through racing out on Zwift in the community. We have the Zwift Academy Dream Team, which is all semi-finalists in the Zwift Academy that are participating in that team, as well as the All-Stars team, which are hand-picked individuals from the community of racing that make up an All-Stars team that is out there competing amongst the pros. And they've definitely been giving the pros a little bit of a run for their money week in and week out here, and ranked fairly highly in the series so far amongst the other teams here. But Tom Mones is currently 156. Looks like there isn't really too much that we were maybe anticipating heading out of the underground tunnel. It does look like a little bit of break back to Ben Healy as well as Dan Bigham and maybe Kim Little there as well, as I am seeing about a 15-second gap actually back to Stephen Clancy now, who's actually, I'm looking over at this, and it is going to be Victor Lefay as well as Stephen Clancy. It looks like Jones there as well as Shauna Whitfield, and Tunes there as well as a few others that have fallen off the back here after leaving the underground tunnel actually. So it does look like that little 3% grade has broken things up a little bit, as we are left with what looks to be 46 riders, somewhere between 48 riders there left. So 2 did fall off the back after the attacks out of the underground tunnel. Again, the wattages though, again, the attacks non-stop, and this is even before that they even hit that, even before they even hit the sprint point out on course here. We're already seeing a few more attacks actually, and Team Kofidis, this was a talking point. Kofidis was off the back from the get-go last week, and there was some chatter that said that Kofidis didn't really show up to race last week. Well, this week, we're seeing Tu's here absolutely killing it toward the front end here, causing some counterattacks coming from Tori from Virtus Pro cycling now, 189 beats per minute. Rivard's here as well, coming out of the US of A here, absolutely demolishing the pedals now, 399 watts right now, absolutely killing it. Looking at Tom Moses here from Madison Genesis right now, and we've seen the fun fact from him here, recently got engaged, and congrats to Tom. So great to see Moses out there racing for Madison Genesis, absolutely killing it right now. And 4.2 watts per kilogram, killing it, was at least staying within the pack there and making it pretty, obviously playing fairly smart at this point, maybe setting up for the sprint. They took the left-hand turn out of Ocean Boulevard. This is where they're going to be heading into another little undulation. Now, this section of the course, there is a slight uphill gradient through those S-turns, about a 1% uphill gradient. And as they hit this section, they hit this little 3% kick, and a lot of times you can carry the speed of 6 to 7 watts per kilogram on that climb. If you're on the front end, this is a dangerous place actually for any of those who are kind of caught off guard. We'll have to see if a little bit of break does happen into the Italian bridges. 688 watts currently from Team Ribble, the winning team last week. Now on the front with Bigham now, 4.6 watts per kilogram. And there was a little prediction from some of the analysis prior to the race that Bigham might be the one to be watching out for. We did see that he, I believe, raced 4 races this past week. I believe won every one of them, I believe, or at least podiumed either one of them. I'm not exactly sure if it was a podium or a win, but Bigham has been doing his homework this past week, looking to try, it looks like, to get the tactics and exactly what you need to do in order to win a Zwift race, and it looks like he's been doing his homework. Wow, Archibald now opening things up. 12 watts per kilogram coming from John Archibald. Kim Little now following it up. Last week's winner of the sprint competition, but Lures is there as well, following it up very closely. They're already into the last 200 meters right now of the sprint point competition. Ribble now following it up. Here comes Kim Little though. No, it's going to be Lures. Lures that barely comes on through and takes down the sprint there, with a solid attack coming right on by Kim Little. And Kim Little's got a ton of experience in those sprints, but no, Lewis showed us that he's got the wattage to throw down, take down that W in that there. So sprint competition looks to be won by Ribble. Ribble actually taking 2 of the spots there in the sprint competition. Kim Little again grabbing some points there. It looks like he took 2nd place in it with 3 points here. Now they got a little bit of a gap, and this is going to be the question each lap. Will the winners of the sprint competition either take advantage, or will there be a counter because their heart rates are going to be so incredibly high, and a lot of the pack actually is going to try and follow this up most likely, and we will most likely see some sort of a counter attack from the rest of this. Bigham here from Team Ribble now, as we can see, 175 beats per minute, is off the front a little bit. 1 second gap back to Lavrik, who's trying to close things down, it looks like. Let's get to the back end of the group here though and see if there is anybody suffering though to try and hang on after those attacks through the sprint point now. It does look like Rose Davies here is having a little bit of a struggle now to hang on, and is off the back about 14 seconds. Looked like it's said and done for him. And for anybody who has done any racing out on Zwift, you will definitely know that once you've lost that pack, it is almost impossible to get back on terms with the race. Back in with this is the replay of the sprint competition, though. Archibald, one who led things out. Lures sitting on the wheel there, but it looks like Little launched his attack there, came on through, and there is the finishing order. Lures followed up by Kim Little, and then it was John Archibald, Team Ribble, taking down those spots. The fourth place we'll have to wait and see, but there is a solid gap, as you can see, between the riders that came through that sprint section. It wasn't even like, usually it's like a wheel or so, but Lures there, absolutely perfect timing by him, able to take down that sprint and grab that 5 points. We'll see if Ribble keeps on showing up each lap for those points, or if that was a little bit of a warm-up for them. It'll be interesting to see. And Kim Little, it seems like, last week we saw him take down the competition very handily, won every single sprint. This week it seems like Team Ribble's showing up and saying, look, we figured out how to race out on Zwift. We've been showing up and practicing, and we have figured out exactly how this timing goes, how to draft. I mean, that was absolutely perfect, because as you saw the watts per kilogram, they were not matched to Kim's, but the timing with the draft looked absolutely perfect. And Lures was able to come on through and absolutely dominate that sprint with the tactic there, actually. So as far as watts per kilogram goes so far throughout the race, we are seeing 5.7, 5.8. The race has definitely not been slow so far. We are seeing the highest out on course so far between the riders is going to be about 5.7 watts per kilogram, actually. That is absolutely, I mean, this is either FTP or well over FTP so far for about 12 minutes so far. So they've been absolutely demolishing this. Alistair Donahoe here from Pro Cycling Sunshine Coast, coming out of Australia with a 5.7 watts per kilogram so far, 338 watts. His normalized power up into 340. So the normalized power hasn't been not much undulation so far, which tells you actually that it's just been consistently crazy fast, super high wattage all the way through. Now it looks like we're going to head on over to our race analyst, actually, Greg Leal, who's going to chat a little bit about some of the favorites that are out there today, as well as what he thinks are going to be for the predictions for the race for this pro cyclist out there out on Zwift. Let's head on over to Greg Leal for some analysis.
Hey, thanks, Nathan. Yeah, interesting move there by Ribble in the points competition. I really like what they did. Having two guys go after it. I think their thought with that is, if you can saturate those points early on in the points competition, you might kind of discourage other teams from trying to take some of those points later on. So by sending Lures and Archibald up there and getting first and third place, we might see some teams who had plans to pick up points later in the points competition. Maybe switch their plans up. You mentioned Bigham's the homework he's been doing on Zwift. I looked at his Zwift power profile, and he's put in in the last 7 days, since last week's KISS Super League, he's put in 6 races, podiumed every one of them, including over the weekend 4 races in one day, podium all of those. This guy's a national champion on the track in the pursuit, in the kilo, and the team pursuit. He's also like an aerodynamic guru, which probably won't come into play today. But it seems like he's got the power really to make something happen. And with the homework that Ribble's been putting in, I think they're going to really be lighting it up, along with with the teams that we've seen lighting it up so far, Madison Genesis and the community teams. So I think those are the guys to really look out for. Bim and Ribble. I think they're going to be making some moves today. So.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been watching out for Ribble for sure. They obviously been doing a lot of racing out on Zwift in the past. Now, a couple of racers though that seem to be really involved. I mean, a couple of the teams that seem to be really involved at the front as well, though. I mean, Adam Hartley from SEG Racing as well, the academy, that has been toward the front end of the race a lot. Again, Kofidis, I think, after some of the feedback from last week, we're seeing Anthony Perez up toward the front, Damian Tudes Tuesday, as well as we're seeing, it looks like, well, Victor Lefebvre has fallen off the back a little earlier, but Kofidis does do 2 riders up toward the front at this point. But Team Ribble, I think after that win last week, are extremely motivated to try and take down the race this week here. So I definitely watching out for them, at least to try and grab the sprint point competition, if not the overall. We are looking at Subin Yage out here as well. Watch out for Jacques here. It looks like he's actually put out about 5.8 watts per kilogram for the duration of the race so far. So obviously motivated to be involved in the race, but with such a high power output so far, 165 beats per minute currently, most like tempo heart rate at this point. We'll have to wait and see if Jacques has enough to hang on in the sprint, because that's a lot of energy being expended. If we look at the differences of the energy that's being expended so far as it being a flatter course, most likely going to come down in a sprint. I do not expect to see something similar to what we saw last week with a last lap breakaway. Now, I might be wrong on the Innsbruck ring course that we had last week with Ed with that breakaway. You know, that was a huge breakaway, something that was totally unexpected, and we don't usually actually see that on that kind of course out on Zwift, but we may see that again because they obviously totally surprised us last week. So pro racing obviously changing things up. There's a lot more power out on course. There's a lot more risks being taken all in, it looks like. So it'll be exciting, hopefully, to see with a lap and a half to go, maybe get a half a lap to go, maybe a full lap to go breakaway. But I'm predicting most likely a sprint situation. And with that, we are seeing 4.4 watts per kilogram currently from Stevie Young. We're seeing 4.6 watts per kilogram from Casey Shump. Both of them Zwift All-Stars. Both of them some of the most experienced racers out on Zwift. We're talking 300 to 400 races experience out on Zwift, and it shows with how little watts per kilogram they put out so far. But Canyon DHB, Lord Holmes here, Alex Patton, I'd be watching out for them. Alex Patton here, 4.6 watts per kilogram. Oliver Peckover as well, Zwift Academy, also 4.6 watts per kilogram, well underneath what we're seeing from some of the other pro teams out there who don't look to be using the draft quite as much and sitting in quite as much in order to kind of chill out on how much power that they're expending. You know, they might be pros, they might have massive amounts of huge amounts of glycogen stores, huge amounts of power to put out through the duration of the race, but the reality is if they use all that up, then it might be gone for the sprint. So it's going to be interesting to see if they've got anything left at the end of the race here. So looking here, though, we do see Bigham here, who did lead out and help with that sprint win for Team Ribble. Solid 162 beats per minute, as you can see right here, as they head on through Ocean Boulevard. Again, as far as the section of the course, they're heading into the S-turns here out on course, and there was a little bit of a gap, actually, it looks like. And for those of you who do not know, out on Zwift, when it comes to the gaps and when you no longer get a draft, it is a 5-meter difference. If you haven't ridden Zwift before, when you're sitting in and on your screen, on these riders' screens, whenever the draft goes out to more than a few meters, it starts saying close the gap, you have no draft any longer. And you have to be within 5 meters to actually get a draft from the riders. So at the bottom of the screen that you're looking at right now, you can see the difference between the riders and how many meters there are. The moment that you see more than 5 meters for a rider that's at the front end of the pack, you know that the gap is big enough that they can start to get away and nobody is drafting them at this point. It does look like things have calmed down quite a bit, though. Out on course, we are heading into those S-turns, and it's going to get a little bit 1% gradient. As you can see in the upper right-hand corner, at any time you do see what the gradient is that the riders are currently riding on. And the Bigham now starting to pump it up to about 5.0 watts per kilogram. Now we are seeing Kofidis there with 8.1 watts per kilogram, though, and that is a Damien here definitely starting to give a little bit of a kick. Now it actually really kicking now up, and we did say it is about 8 to 9 watts per kilogram that you do need to open things up. There's a 1 second gap now. Adam Hartley now trying to follow it up, it looks like here. 7 watts per kilogram coming from him, but it's going out to 2 seconds. I think this is a serious attack here. Heading into the sprint, though, this could be a setup to try and get a gap along with those who sprint through the sprint section, grab some points, and then jump on the heel of the Kofidis rider here as Damien 2 is is absolutely demolishing it off the front. Adam Hartley now trying to close it down. Battistella here from Team Dimension from Quebec, for Quebec here, 4.6 watts per kilogram as well as they kick one over the top there. There's a feather power up though, coming from Bigham, trying to open things up and maybe go ahead and grab some sprint points for himself and perhaps try and take down those 5 points in the sprint so that he can assist Lures there to try and take the overall in the sprint as well. Another tactic you can have, or just open things up and force Kim Little to chase things down. Obviously with the All-Stars there, trying to be involved in the sprint competition. Kim Little closes it right on down. Sprint lap number 2, here we go, and Ribble completely involved. We're seeing all 3 of the Ribble riders up to the front. Here comes Madison Genesis, though, coming on through. Archibald now opening it up for the lead out, 8 watts per kilogram with the drafting power up, actually throwing that down. Now, the reality with that drafting power up is we head into this sprint section. He doesn't actually want that, I believe, coming through the sprint banner, because that actually makes it so that he cannot collect a new power-up, and the fastest power-up you can have is the arrow power-up. So most likely going to see some people burn some power-ups they don't want at this point and try and collect a new one. Things are really open up here. Here comes Ribble now, 9.4 watts per kilogram, but he's been completely sucked in by the entirety of the gap, by the entirety of the pack now as they come flying on through from the draft that they have. Who's going to take the sprint? Alex West toward the front. No, it's going to be Mottram, Archibald, Kim Little, 15 watts per kilogram, and Kim Little shows why he's got the experience out on course. Lures taken down second, Archibald for third, it looks like here. The consistency there from John Archibald, but it looks like Kim Little able to grab 5 points, 3 points for Lures, and I believe 2 is going to be from Archibald. Now we see a counterattack, though, coming from Jacques here, and will this make a break here? That's going to be the question every time we come to this section, of course. Adam Hartley now making his way up toward the front end of the course, and it looks like it's going to be attack from Hartley. And no, now it looks like Dan Huell now taking over the front end, and Battistella there as well. Casey Shum, Battistella, Alex West, all toward the front now, all into those most 8 watts per kilogram. Lachlan now as well, and it looks like Team Ribble, though, still involved here toward the front, 193 beats per minute. But the All-Stars showing us over and over again why they are the most experienced out on course. Perfect timing here. As soon as they round the bend with about less than 100 meters to go, Kim Little throws down 13 watts per kilogram. Archibald and Lures unable to respond, come through in second and third. Looks like Jacques there able to take over that last spot over the line, and we can take the top camera here to see exactly how it played on through, and it does look like Wiggins there coming on through for that 4th place amongst the pack here to grab that last point for the sprint competition. Now heading into the final lap, though, and are there any breaks toward the back end of the course of the group? Now it does look like that sprint section, as we said, was going to break things apart if anybody wasn't following the wheels closely here. We're seeing Comstar, Anderson as well. Oh, Kofidis actually falling off the back here, and it looks like Damien suffering for the attack that he made, maybe actually opening up, and it might have been a little bit of attack there for Perez, because as Damien went off the front Tuesday there, went off the front from Kofidis and attacked, it obviously opened a little bit of something up for, it looks like, his teammate Anthony Perez to maybe to get involved in the break here, but it looks like there's definitely been quite a few riders that have fallen off here. A couple of them still trying to chase. We're seeing Healy here as well as Tuesday, Patton, Mazzato. They're all trying to maybe get back on turns, but I think it's all said and done as we have about 30, no, it's only, let's see here, looking back through, it's going to be 29 riders with Casey Shum at the back end of the pack now, sitting in with a solid 159 beats per minute at about a less than tempo, even into endurance heart rate now at this point for Casey Shum as they head on in here. But it looks like this is the lap 2 results. This is the prelim results for lap 2. Kim Little, 5 points going to him as he takes down that sprint. John Archibald as well as Alex Lures, and it looks like Jacques able to throw down for that 4th place. And this is your standings right now. Kim Little, Alex Lures, and then Jacques followed up by Bovin there as well. Only 1 point to each one of them. We'll see if they can grab a few more and maybe get onto the podium for the sprint competition. They'd have to grab the final, though, sprint across the, across banner there in order to grab that 3rd spot out on course here. So head in the final lap. Let's start seeing your race predictions, though. We have so far going into the final lap, we've got 29 riders that have been able to make the final selection here for this last lap. Most likely going to be, you know, it's most likely going to be a sprint finish here, but we do have, it looks like, attack off the front here, actually. Stuvignaga here, Jacques Stuvignaga from Wiggins Lacole here, off the front with a solid 7 watts per kilogram, and it is a 6-second gap, actually. If this goes out, now we did see in the last lap last week, you know, with Ed Hopper, we saw him have to get a 45-second gap heading into the climb on the leg snapper to be able to hold on to that gap all the way to the finish. So we'll have to see if Stuvignaga here, Jacques, is able to actually grab any kind of a real gap at this point. It looks like that was shut down fairly quickly here. 5.4 watts per kilogram currently coming from Jacques here. 2-second gap. Richardson here, Alex West now, Adam Hartley all toward the front, it looks like, and SEG now closing that down very quickly here. The Dream Team also toward the front here, Ribble as well, all right on that, closes it right on down. The teams are definitely organized and making sure nobody's getting away and setting up for a sprint, it looks like. Battistella now off the front here, 8 watts per kilogram, another attack here into a downhill, though I'm not sure that that's going to be able to make it happen here, because it is a downhill section of the course, 60 kilometers per hour, but the rest of the group is definitely benefiting from the draft that they have at this point, and it doesn't look like it's going to be able to open anything up. It was a solid effort there from Battistella, but Team Dimension for Quebec are not going to be getting off the front at this point. Will there be a counterattack? We're seeing Madison Genesis making the way to the front here, and looks like not happening, though. We're going to go on over to Greg Leo, though, for a little bit of analysis on Jacques Stuvignaga, as he has been in the attack here for a moment. We'll see what Greg has to say about this rider out on Zwift.
You know, already these riders, and Stuvignaga, not unlike the Ribble guys, he hasn't been on training on Zwift and practicing. So even that experience from late racing live in London on round 1, he seems to have picked up some of the nuances of this, and now he's really animating the race. So, you know, this is interesting to see. It's not taking these guys a lot of time on the platform to, you know, to figure out how to use their power to animate the race. And I think we're just going to see more and more of this. You know, Stuvignaga now, his power in this race, he's well over 5 watts per kilogram for the whole race. You know, once they pick up the nuances of the race and they can put that kind of power down, you know, these things are just going to get more and more animated. So, you know, I think this is another guy to watch out for as these rounds progress.
Definitely, and we are seeing, you know, Stuvignaga, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not there's anything left in the legs here. Over and over again, we've seen these attacks and these attempts. The riders are definitely getting used to the sections of the course at which you want to make these attacks, but we've also seen attacks at points where those who are familiar with Zwift racing are like, that's probably not going to work out too well, attacking at those points. And, you know, there's definitely some experience when it comes to knowing what kind of gradients, what kind of position you need to be in, what kind of spot on these courses that you need to be in to try and make these attacks. Again,
so
this
Johnny,
right here,
have Nathan throw to me one more time for predictions
the underwater
before the final sprint.
This is the section right here where we can see a break take place. We've seen every single lap. A few riders fall off. We'll have to wait and see if this happens here, as there is Battistella here up toward the front, as well as Adam Hartley again, who's really been animating these races. It looks like also Ryan Christensen here, Alex West from the Dream Team, really starting to open things up toward the front. Nothing really happened there, though. A couple of attacks. They can see that nobody was really falling off at this point. Their heart rates are very high. Now it's the calm down section. Let things really calm down. Wheel, the attack didn't really out, so let's go ahead and stop trying to whittle things down, wait for the sprint section, see if anybody tries to make a counter as we head into these S-turns as they leave Ocean Boulevard. That is going to be the next section I think the riders with the experience are really going to be looking for. We may see a counter at this point. Somebody might start getting antsy. With only about a half a lap to go, you start to get that heart rate to rise and you start setting up for a sprint section. the butterflies start coming into the stomach, just like you do in real life racing. For anybody who's raced in real life, as you start heading into those final minutes of a race, you start thinking about what's going to happen next, where am I going to get positioned. You get a little bit of nervousness, and people start getting, once that antsiery starts kicking in, you might see a couple of riders say, that's enough of this, I'm going to go. I'm not planning on winning the sprint outright, maybe against the likes of the Python, Stevie Young, or some of these other pro racers with a solid sprint. I mean, we were talking about Bigham here. He's been super experienced, lots of track experience here. Huge results in real life in the sprint. I wouldn't want to be going up against Bigham. Lures was also showing us out there that he's got a solid sprint. Team Ribble's been showing up for every one of these sprints. There's also the reality of Kim Little, who's been winning all these sprint competitions. It looks like he's going to be in it for the sprint competition, maybe not for the final sprint to win on the day, because Steve Young is on the team, maybe trying to just loosen up the legs a little bit of some of the pro teams out there. Watch out, though, I would think, for Madison Genesis. Madison Genesis is out here. They've been very quiet so far with Madison Genesis. Not too involved in a lot of the attacks. I think they're really saving up for the final sprint. Let's go back on over the great first predictions for the final.
The Zwift Community All-Stars came in with two cards to play here. Steve Young, who's kind of the traditional power sprinter at 79 kilo, and Adam Zimmerman, who's more of like a flyweight durable sprinter. And, I didn't see what happened, but I noticed now Steve Young's off the back. I know he was on some new equipment today, so, whenever you switch over to, a new trainer or something like that, it always takes some time, which probably some of these pros are learning. It takes some time to get used to producing power on that equipment, so that could be part of it. But still, the All-Stars with Adam Zimmerman to play in the final, we haven't seen much from Casey and Adam, so they're probably reshuffling the cards right now and figuring out how to strategize for this final sprint. But another team we haven't seen anything from yet is Madison Genesis, and I think with a bunch of fresh riders there, if I just sort by the power output in the race so far, I think these Madison Genesis guys are fresh, and so I expect we'll see Ian Bibby just right up there at the end as well. So this is going to be a lot of talented sprinters coming in fresh into this sprint, and I think we're going to see it light up early. Like probably, as soon as they come under, we'll see a little rock archway, slightly downhill sprint from there, and probably even with half a mile to go, where I think we're going to start seeing this sprint light up because we got some fresh legs in here.
Yeah, we're actually seeing right from this point right now, Ian Bibby actually at a section of the course that I'm really surprised that he threw down like that. That was absolutely a crazy attack from both, Ian Bibby on the attack there, as well as Battistella there. Interesting to see, because that was some crazy power thrown down. There was some energy being expended that I'm not sure was the smartest section to make that move. Lures now from way out, 200 meters out actually. Alex Lures absolutely demolishing the sprint, looking to take down the sprint competition, and Kim Little 2 seconds off the back. I don't think this is going to happen for Kim, but actually it's going to be Archibald. No, Archibald's going to take out his teammate. He should not be doing that if he wants to let him win it, and it looks like Archibald, too many watts from John Archibald. I don't think it's going to matter, though, as I believe Lures might be able to, in the points, still win it. They're still on the attack, though. It's going to be all about this gap if they can hold on to it. I don't think it's going to happen, though, as we're seeing Nick White here, the Dream Team, making his way up to the front here. Here's the replay, though. How did it end up playing out? Did he barely hold on? Archibald takes the push from Lewis. It was too many watts in the last 100 meters, and John Archibald grabs those points. We'll have to wait and see what the actual points are at the end of the race, though, because we are heading into the final few K here, and the attacks are on as they head through the Essies here. This section of the course is the most painful as you head into the final kilometer, and riders start really kicking through these little uphill seconds, and big off the front. Team Ribble showing us that they know how to go and make the breaks happen, not allow these sprints to happen. He's got 6 seconds off the front. Bingham absolutely killing it, 8.2 watts per kilogram. Through these undulations, every single time they hit this uphill, he knows how to kick into those orange numbers. 188 beats per minute. He's got a 6-second gap now. We're seeing now Bovin here now trying to make the close here. 180 beats per minute coming from him. Ian Bibby from Madison Genesis perfectly set up to the front, but he's got to send Madison Genesis have to get organized. They have to take over the front end of this race right now if they want to win this race, because Bingham's out the front. He was racing 5 races for over the past week, and he's won every single one he's jumped into him. He's looking to win round number 3 of the KISS Super League, absolutely demolishing it. Team Ribble going 2 for 2 in these last 2 weeks here. 7 seconds off the front, but that can get shut down so quickly as the pack comes screaming by at those last few meters. He's going to need a little bit more gap than this, as I believe, as Jacques Sauvagnage is now starting to kill it toward the front here. Now it looks like Bigham with 7 seconds. He's going to have to throw down arrow power up any moment now, because it's going to be absolutely over if this pack really starts to open up, and that's exactly what they're going to do. Battistella here from Team Dimension for Quebec leading things out now for the main pack, and it looks like it's going to be all said and done for Bingham. He gave it a go here, but the arrow power-ups are popping, and Bovin's going now. Bibby down, though. Ian Bibby, 10 watts per kilogram, opening things up, but no, Bovin is going. No, the Dream Team now, though, and it looks like Guevara's here from the Dream Team, absolutely demolishing the sprint. Bingham's trying to hang on, but no, it's going to be Guevara's. The Dream Team looks to be maybe taking it, but no, John Mold, 13 watts per kilogram, followed up by Ian Bibby. Madison Genesis showing us how it's done, as it's going to be 1-2 for Madison Genesis. Not sure which one it was. I believe Ian Bibby might have just etched out Mold, but John Mold, Ian Bibby showing us they know how to race. Madison Genesis absolutely demolishing this race out here today.
I have some analysis there.
Alex West, I believe, from the Dream Team just barely came through at the last second here. Looking at the results here, preliminary, John Mold, Ian Bibby, Alex West is what I've got so far, but we'll have to wait and see here. Let's get some analysis from Greg here on the replay of that final sprint.
Yeah, I mean, that was really something. I think, I think the Madison Genesis guys played it. It was just solid tactics. I mean, they held back on the points race. They were all in for the win on this one. And from interviewing Ian early on, that's been their plan. They want to win these races. The points aren't so much on their radar. And had they tried to participate in that, they wouldn't have had so much firepower at the end. It was an excellent lead out, and it was good to see some of the community guys in there again. Alex West has really been building his sprint over the past few months since participating in Zwift Academy, and that's really paying off. He's got the fitness to hang in there and be fresh at the end, and now he's got that snap too. So good on him for building that up and working on that for this series of races. And I think I also saw Adam Zimmerman up there near the front as well from the Zwift All Stars team. So. The community guys, it's very, very consistent tactics and very consistent results. But, you got to give it up to Madison Genesis for playing that one perfectly.
Well, Greg, look at the how things really played out at the end there. Madison Genesis, it looks like very patient. They didn't care at all about the sprint competition. Obviously, Ribble was really involved there. Ribble had a plan coming in, it looked like there. They wanted to take the sprint competition, and they counterattacked with Bingham. Bingham didn't get involved in any of the sprint competition situations. And then Madison Genesis, though, sitting in the entire race, opened things up, arrow power-ups. They played the patient game. They knew what they needed to do to close things down, and it was all about the last 200 meters. It really looked like Ribble, along with Genesis, again, showed up this week with a plan, and they executed it well.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I was thinking kind of at the end there that so one guy we were missing this week was Connor Dunn. We saw him really light it up in round one, and I spoke to him a little bit before this race. So he was actually slated to participate in this race, and he got stuck with a delayed flight coming back from Argentina from the Tour de San Luis. So we missed out on his fireworks today, but we've seen so many new guys lighting it up with Team Ribble, and we'll have Dunn back for the next rounds. Things could have played out a little bit differently if he had been attacking early on. But now we're learning more and more about these riders, and it's getting more and more exciting each week.
Yeah, we're seeing here Madison Genesis coming through. Arrow power-ups all around. Looks like they were popped maybe just a little bit late as they still had them coming on through. But the Dream Team, again, Madison Genesis, super involved. All-Stars coming through. We are seeing one Canyon DHB there coming on through there with the top 5 there. Battistella was super involved there. Solid top 15 there. It'll be interesting to see how things play out for the individual as well as the team results here. How do you think it's going to play out in the overall here for these teams? I mean, obviously the ones that have been doing a lot of their racing out there, Ribble as well as Madison Genesis, it looks like, Canyon as well has been really getting involved toward the front end, but only one racer up toward the front this week. You did see Kofidis. You want to talk a little bit about that? It looks like they were a little bit more motivated this week. Anthony Perez had made it as well as Tuesday. So what do you think there was happening there with Kofidis? It looks like some more people did their homework. A lot more people got some more experience in the past week races, and the starts out on Zwift, as they're definitely not neutral, Greg.
Yeah, I think, Confidence got a little bit of it from the community this past week for basically having a Zone 2 ride last week, maybe Zone 1. But, these guys are all pros. They have their training schedules. We don't know. They could very well have all been tired going into that race last week. One thing we might be seeing here is that, the pros really seem to be getting more and more into this. I know, talking to Ed Hopper this week, he's just super excited about this KISS Super League, and I think more and more of the pro teams, now that they're experiencing what it's like, are getting more into it. And we could see the teams, maybe they're shifting around their schedule, their training plans a little, leak, coming into these races a little fresher. We saw Perez hold down well over 5.5 watts for the first lap of this race, basically. He came in with power. He came in to stick with that front group, and it was nice to see them, on the front, animating the race a little bit. So, none of these teams are treating this like a second-rate race at this point. They all seem to be into it. A lot of the riders really seem to be having a good time and getting good training out of it. So, I think that's kind of what we're seeing with Confidence now. They're really taking it seriously, and I think, Perez, he's got a lot of talent, and I think we're going to see him do something as this series progresses. So I think he's definitely one to watch.
Yeah, we're seeing the results here up on screen here. John Mold, Ian Bibby, Alex West, Brad Gavaris there for the Dream Team. Adam Zimmerman running up the top 5 there. Again, we're seeing Dream Team and All-Stars there really involved up to the front there with Ryan Christensen. Now this week, though, the All-Stars, not as many in that top 10, but we're seeing a few more of the Dream Team with Christensen, as you can see there, Gavaris, Alex. I mean, that's a pretty solid showing there. Battistella here, a little shout out to him as 5.7 watts per kilogram. Team Dimension for Quebec there, absolutely demolishing the watts per kilogram and still getting involved in the sprint there for a top 10 overall. George Pym there, followed by John Archibald. Be interesting to see how the sprint competition played out, as we did see Ribble competing against each other a little bit, not allowing Alex Lurs to take the first overall there. Solid results those we're seeing in that top 10. We'll have the team results here up in just a moment for where things stand for the team standings. And as we do see, here's the team points there. 97. Though, interesting to see Zwift Community All-Stars were able to take over and hold on to that 97 points overall. Their first place, Madison Genesis, with those top points. Now, is this week's team points with them updated? We'll have to wait and see, as it looked like something similar to what I did see last week. So I'll have to wait and see if that was, I believe that was last week's situation. Am I right, that, Greg?
Yeah, I think that would be. I mean,
results.
You look at Madison. Yeah, you look at Madison Genesis putting all four guys in almost the top 10. Tom Moses finishing 11th. So they picked up a lot of points this week. They picked up 1st, 2nd, 8th, and 11th. So that's going to be a lot of points coming to them. The Zwift All-Stars looks like Adam Zimmerman in 5th. I see Kim Little in 13th. So I think they're going to be falling behind a little bit. Casey Shum in 12th. So they had a lot of consistent finishes there. But certainly with that first and second finish of Madison Genesis, I think they're going to be moving well ahead in the rankings, and I suspect they'll be solidifying their lead over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I would definitely speak a little bit to Ribble's attacks there too. I mean, what about the tactics from Team Ribble? You know, Bigham with that go at the last moment, it looked like he was able to held on to it, but I mean, what kind of gap you need in that section? I mean, in that section, of course, it would have had to been like at least 20 seconds, and he had to open it up maybe even a little bit earlier than he did because it looked like he kind of waited a second climb rather than the first climb in order to try and get that gap going there. I mean, that's a huge ask to try and hold on to that kind of a gap in that section of the course there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's like I said, he's a pursuit national champion, so he's definitely got the power to do that, and that's how, if he's going to win this race, that's how he has to do it. Lionel Vujasin of the All Stars once told me, if you want to win a race, you have to be prepared to lose it. And it looks like he was absolutely prepared to lose this race. He stuck to what he's good at. He attacked with over a kilometer to go. I don't exactly remember when he attacked, and tried to hold it. One thing is he's been practicing on Zwift, but how many times has he done Watopia Flat? It's definitely a classic course that a lot of the riders like Kim Little and Casey Shum have probably raced on dozens and dozens of times. But even with 10, 20 races, you're not going to be hitting the same course over and over again. So knowing that final finish, the finish of this course is a little tricky with the Essies. It kind of goes up and down, slight downhill finish. Knowing exactly when to go, how much power you have to put out, knowing when the pack is going to come to a lull or something like that, that's something that comes with a lot of experience. He's now building experience to know the nuances of Zwift, but knowing those tiny details about when to attack, when to expect the group to lull, those could have given him a little bit more of an advantage today. Now, whether even with those extra advantages, whether he would have been able to hold that at the end, I'm not sure. That was a big pack with a lot of fresh legs, especially from Madison Genesis, and I expect they probably would have pulled him back even with an absolutely extraordinary effort there. But great for Ribble. They're definitely out there to entertain us. I think they're maybe not trying to go for the win on these races, but they're definitely trying to make a difference in the races, getting their names out there, and and it seems like to me definitely having a good time. I noticed Ed Hopper was actually in the chat, just cheering on his teammates. So they're all in for this, and that's great to see, I think.
As far as that goes, the competition is really heating up. I'm definitely seeing the pros taking a lot of interest watching the broadcast back, watching during the broadcast, and we're seeing a lot of chatter afterwards. And I think that they, and then having their teammates in the chat and cheering each other on, and maybe even after the race saying, well, what are you doing here and what are you doing there? There's a lot of tactics playing out there. And like you said, the experience of race after race after race, knowing these courses, getting super familiar with them, it's definitely going to be a thing that they're going to need to be doing throughout the weeks here in order to really learn what to do when out on Zwift here for each one of these courses. 10 weeks of racing, that's 3 down so far, 7 more to go. We're going to go and wrap it up with Matt Stevens for the end of the broadcast here. On over to Matt.
Thanks very much indeed, Nathan. Thanks very much indeed, Greg. Do you know what? Thanks to the racers for putting on an absolutely spectacular show. And just to add my kind of tuppence worth into the mix, really interesting the way that the professional riders in particular are starting to adapt to the style of racing on Zwift. Some of the big powers early on over the last couple of rounds has really taken some of the pros by surprise, but we had a bigger pack going into the back end of the race, although we did see still a few riders on these little drags get popped out of the back. But what I liked was the kind of panache and the flair of Dan Bigham. I echo the sentiments of what Greg was saying in relation to them entertaining us, because bike racing, whether in the real world or in a virtual world, should be entertaining. What we don't want to see is racers just waiting for a bunch sprint. So it's great to see Dan Bigham, a real class act as well, a real versatile rider, going long. Only got caught with about 300 metres to go. He went just before the climb on the S's, just after the hotspot sprint, which in open racing is a classic place to attack, and he held that power all the way to the finish, and even when he got caught, he was still putting out 510 watts. Very, very impressive, but most of all, for you viewers out there, it was exciting racing. But what can you say about Madison Genesis now? 3 rounds down, they've got 2 individual wins, but just by virtue of their kind of smart racing, waiting until the end, they're amassing points to the top. In a few moments' time, we will see the official rankings, the correct rankings. Apologies about that before. Here are the current team points, and just look at that. As we said before, Madison Genesis, by virtue of that win from John Mouldy, the Welshman, just beating his English counterpart into second place. Very close indeed. 142 points to the good, but great riding as well, of course, by the Zwift Community All-Stars. In second place, 119 points. And in third place currently, the Zwift Academy Dream Team with 88. And then we have Ribble Pro Cycling. Dan Bigham, of course, animating the race, the back end of the race at least, with 72 there. So still all to play for, but after 3 rounds, Madison Genesis have really got a hold of the KISS Super League so far. Got some fascinating racing still to come. I, for one, am really, really looking forward to it. Of course, there was another classification that we had tonight, and that was the intermediate sprints. I think Kim Little was the rider that lit that up the most. We'll just get that on the board for you in a moment. Again, some real interesting strategies being used for that. It was actually, there we go. That's the final result from an individual perspective. John Mould taking the win by just 0.033 seconds from teammate Ian Bibby. And then Alex West, of course, of the Academy team in third place, rounding out the podium. And then we have Brad Guveros of the Dream Team, Alex Zimmerman in 5th, then Ryan Christensen from Canyon Iceberg, the first Canyon rider there in 6th. Then we had Sam Battistella, very aggressive early on, opened up that sprint early, but of course was swamped in the end. Then we have George Pym, John A. and William Wavan, the Canadian, in 10th place for the Israeli Cycling Academy. So some really interesting riders in the mix there. Here we go. There's the Preem lap overall. It's not Kim Little who's top of the rankings there. It's very, very close. It's Alex Lurs with 12 points who leads that classification, with Kim Little in second with 10, and then John A. in third. And then Dan Bigham of Ribble and Jacques Sauvignacs down in 5th place with 1 solitary point there. So that is the situation with the Preem lap. But as was said before by Nathan, we still have 7 rounds to go. And for me, it is very intriguing to see how the pro riders in particular are really adapting to this racing. Giving that kind of racing spirit, getting in the mix a little bit more, willing to attack, and also taking risks. Of course, cycling is all about taking risks. Not reckless risks, but risks that sometimes, well, will pay dividends, because who dares wins at the end of the day. It's been a fantastic 3rd week here of the KISS Racing. I'm going to be back next week for some more, but for the time being, thank you very much indeed for tuning on. Make sure you tune in next week. And if you want to tell your mates, please do. We want to get more and more people watching this, because I tell you what, the KISS Super League is really going places. And in a few weeks' time, of course, we've got the Women's KISS Super League as well. It's all happening. Do not miss it. But for the time being, from me, Matt Stevens, it's a very good night.